This is Annie Kid Wolf, and you're watching This is Punk Rock for Punk Globe Magazine.
1, 2, 3, 4. Punk rock, punk rock, punk rock. 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 It ain't brain surgery. Punk rock, punk rock, punk rock. 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 It ain't brain surgery. One, two, three, four.
Hi, Jason Pettigrew. Welcome to This is Punk Rock for Punk Globe Magazine. So great to have you here. You
Thank you very much
are
for the invite. I am grateful.
you are amazing.
Thank
You're an incredible journalist. You're an awesome author. You're just one of those people who has so many talents, my friend. And I want to talk to you about punk rock and a little bit about your history and what it means to you and all of that stuff. So, started out by just telling me about what you're doing and or what you've been doing to get in, what you did to get into punk rock. See, that's my blah, blah, blah. What you know, in the very beginning when you first heard punk rock and what it made you feel. I want to know
you.
that first, and then you can interweave bits and pieces of your career so that people will know exactly who you are.
Don't we have
Scare
computers that don't
you?
we have an internet that knows that stuff about me already?
Yep.
Um, here's my punk rock uh, experience. There's this old running thing between rock critics and cultural historians who say that it was the bands from the British invasion who sold rhythm and blues, rock and roll back to the States. Rolling Stones, I guess to the Beatles, of course, to an extent, were listening to a lot of, classic American blues, and they just sped them up. I guess they had better amphetamines back then, and sped them up and sold the culture, sold the whole vibe back to America. My thing is kind of like that with punk rock, in that I used to be a big prog rock kid. ELP, yes, King Crimson, Genesis, all of that stuff. And right around about I want to say right about, I think around 1977, 78, all of my favorite punk rock, all of my favorite prog rock millionaires made really horrible records. I mean, it was just like, it was gross. It was completely gross. I felt completely let down. The kids in school are already making fun of me because you like that weird brainy stuff. You don't like Peter Frampton. You don't like Journey. You don't, and so um, I somehow I'm trying to think. I don't know how it was, but somehow I heard a copy of the first Damned album.
Ah.
So I had heard I heard the first and like I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And then I discovered Sex Pistols, and the Sex Pistols, uh, it was okay, but it didn't have the command. I thought the first Damned album had like a bit of a command to it, like this is what we are, this is our culture, this is it. 1, 2, fuck you, go. Whereas the Pistols were kind of like, I'm going to hate on you for a little bit here, and it seemed there was a lot of posturing that went with it, but they were still great songs. But it was the Damned who sold it to me. The reason, so getting back to my original argument, the Damned made me go, oh, so there's this thing called the MC5, which I had always heard about mentioned in copies of Cream magazine. And then there was that Iggy guy that was always in photos with David Bowie or Lou Reed or something. What the hell's he done? I don't know anything about this guy. So ultimately, it was through British punk rock that I was able to embrace, the Stooges and the MC5 and that type of vibe. So that's kind of like where I came from. And
And
then after that, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and how did that make you feel when you were saying about the Damned? Like, did it feel like this just resonates with me and I can feel a vibe that goes with it? Because I know when I listen to different kinds of music and it just hits home so hard, it's like a changing of my soul almost, right? So I always wonder with people who moved on and did all kinds of things through their career that was around the arts. I always wonder about what those things, those changes were.
To me, and this is the same thing. This is the same thing. What I got from it, I got the same rush I got from it liking prog rock. Um, Two different things, but the different thing is, I felt that I felt like I was the member of a club that nobody knew about.
Cool.
You didn't hear
That's a
this
great
music
way to
on the
put it.
radio. You didn't hear this music on the radio. MTV didn't happen yet. I mean, there were bands. There were here in Western Pennsylvania where I was brought up. There was lots of cover bands aping all of the stuff that the local classic rock record radio station used to play. But then there was like these small little pockets of activity in the city of Pittsburgh. I was like more. I was like 35 miles away, more in the sticks. And I got this thing when you hear those records and you're like, wow, this is something that nobody knows about. Only I know about this. And then when you go to a record store or something and you maybe see another person who's like, wow, that's a cool t-shirt, whether it was something like the Ramones or even something really obscure, like it to American ears, like that British mod band's Secret Affair. You see the person with the Secret Affair button, which is like the keyhole, the white keyhole and the black thing, and with the name on it, like ooh ah. And one of my best friends in life, is I met him. I was working for that chain, that National Record Mart retail chain. He came into the store wearing a Public Image Limited logo button and a big button of Jack Nance in Eraserhead.
Oh, neat.
And I just walked right up to him. I said, "I don't know who you are, but I think you and I need to be friends." He's like, "Cool." And that was, oh my God, what was that? It was like late 70s. And we have been friends. My buddy Eric Bauer, he's we've been friends ever since. So, and we had the thing where we're in that club and we're just like saying that everything that everybody else likes is lame, you know. And then obviously there was new wave that was happening, and obviously Stooges, you learn about the Stooges, you learn about the MC5, then you learn about the Velvets, and then it's like, oh, and then from the Velvets, it's kind of nebulous there, and you get into like, oh, there's like, oh, so Roxy Music, which always kind of crossed the line. People claim that they're a prog band. Many people say, no, no, they were a glam band. I'm just kind of like straddle the line with that, but it's still important that I think it's like what Lars Fredrickson always says. It doesn't matter when you get into punk; it matters that you do. And I completely buy that. I mean, that's completely it. I think the other thing was the stuff that they would play on the radio, everything, the Eagles and just all that stuff that I really hated. I really hated like it stole my money or something like that. I was never going to learn anything. I was never going to learn anything about the outside world due to that 70s rock thing that everybody is like, oh, it's classic, it's nostalgia, it's wonderful. No, it's always been trash. I don't care. You'd read stories about the Sex Pistols or like British punk, and they'd talk about hanging out in various cities, whether it was London or Manchester or something, about these big speakers outside of record stores, and they're playing, dub reggae and all that stuff. And here I am in Greensburg going, dub reggae, what the hell's that? So I would learn about things, or I'd read an old interview with the MC5 talking about John Coltrane. John Coltrane, okay. So really, when everybody says punk rock is something to be marginalized, or it's just ineffectual, or if there's any type of negative sort of content with connotations ever made to punk rock, I'm just kind of like, yeah, no, no. I know it's obvious you're stupid, or worse than that, you're ignorant and you're uninformed about anything, and anything you have to say about anything, I am completely wary of. You told me I was on fire, I'd be like, no, no, I'm not. Even if if there was four alarms happening behind me.
Yeah, and
So
I think
I
that's a
think that,
great,
and that's my
yeah.
experience.
That's really great. Those are so many good little tidbits that you touched on because I think that punk rock for me was one of those things, right? Where you kind of were like, oh, what about this? And oh, what about that? And oh, that's interesting. And it really funneled a lot of cool, interesting music into my life, right? And when I was young, it was like a movement too. It was the political stuff of the punk rock that went along with it. And how did that stuff affect you?
Well, I mean, we should probably all give a warm round of applause to Ronald Reagan for jump starting our consciousness about that stuff. You know, so we're seeing now, like, oh, he did the tax breaks that he gave all his buddies back in the '80s. We can see how that's manifested now today.
Yeah.
But and there's another. When you're from the sticks, you're from Western Pennsylvania. If it's not Molly Hatchet or Bob Seger or or all of that stuff, you are looked at as the other. Another great friend of mine that I'm sure he knows, everybody knows him, Mike Lavella, was responsible for. He brought the first. He started hardcore in Western PA in Pittsburgh. He started Pittsburgh's first hardcore band, Real Enemy, and with his buddy. And it's really funny because I'm trying to remember. I think it was with like Mike. If you're listening to this, I'm sorry, I forget the gig that you went to, but I think it was the Gun Club at 9:30 at the old 9:30 Club, and there were a bunch of other like very high profile bands that were playing that. He was just inspired to do that, and he had some friends with him. He had one friend with him who was only into records on Factory, like Ratio and Joy Division and New Order, and the other guy was into prog. I mean, the deep prog stuff like Gong and Gentle Giant and Mahavishnu fusion and all that stuff. And then they got some guy from a local band who just wanted to play hard and fast. You had these four disparate personalities playing in a hardcore band, and that was kind of liberating, kind of democratizing, but also on the fringe outlook because you played hard and fast, and that's not singing, that's not playing, whatever. Because everybody likes the look at me, look at me, look at me, take me, take me, take me, look at me, whatever. Okay, Shreddy Kilowatt, shut up. And so it was just really how that happened. And then Mike formed Half Life after that. It was a little bit sludgier, a little more street punkish, a little more Charge meets Flipper. If we do that thing, and then he moved to the West Coast and stayed out there, where he still collects a lot of records, DJs, and is a swell guy to everybody who loves punk history. So that kind of there was a social thing that you would hang out with people who you didn't know anything about them. It's like, oh, you're into this band, you're into this type of thing. Oh, have you heard this? I never heard about that. You're exchanging information, and then obviously friendships grow from that. And sometimes they come from unlikely places, and ultimately there's a great level of politicizing as well. I mean, it's kind of why were the rednecks like hating on other cultures? Why were they? Why do we? I'm not going to do this. Why should I stand for anything that they stand for? I'm not like that at all.
And
And
that's a good subject because I just want to cut you in there is that, it's been come up a few times about being the outcasts of society, and that's how they all gravitate together. A lot of your story through there is talking in the beginning is talking about being that, very unique, like, oh, you got the same shirt as me. You got the same button. Like, oh my God, we need to be friends. So I think that punk as a movement that's a big part of it, right? Where you feel kind of a sense of
oh
belonging,
yeah,
and that
oh
I'm
yeah,
getting that
absolutely.
from you. And so I want to talk to touch on your writing. So when you first got into writing, what was the catalyst for that? Big
I
question.
don't know.
You don't know?
I can't tell you. I generally don't know. Looking at it, I don't know what I was. I mean, I went to college. I went to school. I didn't know. Well, I think I'm just gonna get the good old liberal arts education and get that degree, and then end up with a Best Buy shirt on or something. Um, why did it? I don't know. I thought that for some reason I thought that I was going to. Well, for the first 2 years, I was still like, buying records, buying lots of records. In fact, this triggers another story in that it was like late '70s. I was gonna like, oh man, I'm hearing about all these weird things happening in New York with punk and this stuff called no wave, and this sounds really exciting. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna save all my money, and everybody's telling me rent is cheap, and I'm gonna go for broke and go do this. But I kept buying records and I couldn't save a damn quarter. So ultimately, and I did have a friend that ended up going there, and he had a good time, like watching, Nick Cave at 4 o'clock in the morning at the Peppermint Lounge and all that stuff. But there was also some dangers to be had in that community as well. So I don't know, but I went to college, and I decided after 2 years, like, well, I should get a writing degree because that would be kind of cool. Because what I really want to do more than anything in life is be a staff writer, not an editor, not a not any type of editor. Just I want to be a staff writer at Trouser Press magazine, which was the that was my bible for the cool English stuff that was happening and the cool new wave stuff and some of the classic rock things that were still cool. I still liked the Who back then, even though the records to me were just kind of like, okay, I like this song and that song and this, kind of a marginal thing. And so I aspired to that, and then uh, Ira Robbins, the genius behind Trouser Press, said, "Okay, I'm done," and closed up shop. I'm like, oh, damn. And then I was kind of depressed, just grumpy and foul and mean. And then so all of my other friends who weren't in this community, who didn't have that, had that type of just, oh, Jason, don't worry, you can always try to see if you can get in at Rolling Stone. No, I don't want to. I don't want to write someplace that's going to put the Eagles on the cover. I'm not going to write someplace that's going to put, who else was I hating on? It was just pretty much anybody like on the cover of Rolling Stone. And then so I got this job. I was still working my job at the uncool record chain, National Record Mart, and I went to see. I think I went to see Wire. I'm trying to remember if I went to see Wire. I can't remember if it was no, no, no. It was yeah, yeah. I think it was Wire Love and Rockets. But there was a stack of this paper called Alternative Press. I'm like, oh, what's this? And I, grabbed one,
What year
on
is
the way
this?
out the door. And, oh, geez, this is early '80s. This has got to be 80, 85, 84, 85. I can't.
Go
So I
on.
think it's like 84,
Yeah, yeah.
85. It's 85. I think 85, 86. And I go through there, and gentleman who who started Alternative Press, Mike Shea, had written this really bad review of Peter Murphy's cover of Perubu's Final Solution. It came out, and I'm like, oh, really? What? Who the hell is what? Was this guy even listening to the same record? Well, so I'm like in my, I'm living there in my apartment in the Valley of the Self Righteous. You know what I mean in my head, right? And Mike put his phone number on the masthead. So I'm dialing, not touch tone. I'm dialing up and I'm like, "Hey, I saw this thing, and and I said, like, it's a really cool thing here, but what the hell were you writing? What the hell were you thinking when you wrote that review?" And I was just, totally being. You could hear Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance playing in the background. Ba, 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 ba. And another thing, you did. happening. And
You're a
finally,
big
after listening
punk
to me rant for
rock.
like
You're a big punk rock.
yes, right. And at 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes after he gets done listening to me rant for five, six, maybe it was 20. I don't know. And he goes, "Well, do you think you can do better?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "Okay, you're doing a Pittsburgh scene report, and it's going to go in this issue." So,
Wonderful.
and that, and that is how I got involved with alternative press. Young people who are watching this, that is not how you get a job in 2025. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Okay. That's the first disclaimer for this clip. So yeah, that was it. And then I was a I was just a freelance thing. I was just freelancing for them. I was pretty much, writing. There were a couple like local Pittsburgh things that I were writing for. But alternative press, it seemed like everybody was excited about it. They, that their focus was a lot of stuff because the original blueprint for Mike Shea was a lot like the original blueprint that Mike Shea had in mind for alternative press. As well, okay, you got a fanzine here, hardcore, and you got one that's kind of like into like Anglophile stuff, British things, and then there was another community that was like dance music because he liked a lot of the electronic dance music, and he said, and he thought to himself, well, look, all of this stuff exists on the fringes. Why can't we just have one thing that brings all those camps together? And that was his rationale for alternative press. And the phrase alternative press has nothing to do with music. The definition of music as alternative. It was all a thing of this is information. This is a place for information about stuff that you want to know about that you're not going to hear from MTV, you're not going to hear from Rolling Stone, you're not going to hear from Modern. The conduit is alternative, not necessarily the stuff that's inside it. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
when you hear things like, I mean, like, because the word alternative is now this nomenclature uh, of genre, but nobody really knows what that genre is. You can argue it all. Well, let's see. The Jam, the Clash, Chrome, the Screamers, Roxy Music. Well, that's all alternative, but none of that stuff sounds the same, right?
Yeah.
So that's where that's where the nomenclature gets really weird. But that was the start of alternative press. That was the roots of that, and it was always covering stuff on the fringe, always on the fringes and all that stuff. I mean, they had there was what was the hardcore? I guess it was a local Cleveland hardcore band, Numbskull, that was really big, and everybody said Numbskull sold out because they're on the cover of Alternative Press. They're only the cover of Alternative Press number 6, issue number 6, and then somebody said you sold out because you were on the cover of Alternative. You know what I mean? And the worst thing you can do is like be a sellout, you know, which
Yeah.
kind of
Things have
which
changed.
now things have changed significantly. There was a time, and I bring this up in the I bring this up in the 33 and a third book I just completed on Ministry's classic album, The Land of Rape and Honey. It's the
When does that
first
come out?
chapter where when it comes out May 1st. There's it's up on the Bloomsbury site. You can pre-order it, I swear. But this is the important thing. This is the massive thing. We all know that selling out, to me at least, and I think we can say this about everybody else. I think everybody else has the same idea. Selling out means your first record sounds like Black Flag, and your second record sounds like Nickel. Okay, it's you have made significant changes to your art, so you can get a little Johnny Greenback. You know what I mean? The
Or
late
you just
Casey Chaos.
evolve too, right? Or you just evolve.
Well,
Like,
you just
I
evolve.
mean,
You learn how to play your instrument better. You learn more
or you're
chords. Maybe you
really angry in the
experience the
beginning,
world,
super angry, and then you're
and then
not
you're not.
as angry. And then, maybe people give you some, oh wow, you're really good. And you're like, oh, that's the, confirmation I needed for myself and my soul or whatever. And you write just a little bit different. I mean, who knows? It's always funny that the way albums change and the evolution. Sometimes when they change to me and I hear it, you can really hear they're trying to sound like something, But then, sometimes you hear the fact that they're just going through a different chapter of their life. So you're on it.
Okay, your first album sounds like Black Flag, and your second album sounds like Carole King's Tapestry. Okay,
Yeah,
I
well,
got
that's
you.
a bit
But
different. That's a bit different.
but Casey Chaos, who recently passed away,
Yeah.
rest in peace, Casey. Completely just amazing. He has this one quote that I interviewed him once back in 2000, and he says one quote that I always steal. That he always says. He says, "I want to make music from the heart and not the wallet,"
Yeah.
which is the baseline for the concept of selling out.
Yeah.
When you change your art for financial gain, I mean, that's usually it. That's usually, or I don't want my no, I'm not going to have my song in a soft drink commercial. There are these aspects, but now in the year of our Lord 2025, and it's been happening for a while now, you'll get all these young pop punk bands, whatever, and they get, they're busy. They're still eating out of dumpsters when they're on tour, and they're sleeping in the Walmart parking lot in their van. But one of them, hey, our big hit single just got picked up. I just got picked up for a toothpaste ad, and everybody's like, congratulations! Oh my God, that's wonderful! Yeah, yeah, and I don't know if it's prestige, but I think it is the result of late stage capitalism because everybody wants to be able to survive. So if they get a couple $1,000s to put more diesel in the van or something like that, just for them in order for them to merely survive, they embrace that stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess you have to embrace that stuff. I have never been in a band, but I tell you, I feel for musicians hard. I just like, why are these streaming rates so painfully small? Uh, why, just the illegal downloading or something like that, or just there seems to be so I go to the shows, I don't buy merchandise though because I'm too busy eating drunk. Haha. That I don't understand why everybody. It seems like it's really war on musicians, and I
Yeah.
really hate that.
It's hard because, you look at a big band like Ministry, for example, and, they play huge sold out shows and the money for the shows goes to the tour, to making the tour happen, to, paying for the gas and to doing all that stuff. And where any band makes money these days is the merchandise. So when people go to these gigs, it's like go and buy the merchandise. Doesn't matter how big the band is, because that's the only thing that's going to get that band back is the merchandise, and that's where they make money. With the streaming, it's impossible to make money if you're not touring or you don't have those toothpaste commercials. But to me, I still have these like punk values where I don't think I can do that. And that's just a part of my heart, even though like I do write music for my heart, and my album that is coming out is not at all commercial. I've kind of gone the opposite. I'm like, yes, So it's like, so I understand, I understand the young generation doing it now, and the young pop punk, and, doing the best that they can to survive. But what I want to say to people out there is buy merchandise, help buy physical copies of albums, support as much as you can, right? And I mean, that's just my own thing. That was just my own sidebar in there.
Oh, I mean, but it's not a sidebar. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just it's
you're
just a
right.
fact. It's a fact of life now. And you've got clubs taking their merchandise cut, but the bands
Yeah.
don't get a cut of the bar. And when you ask about it, it says, "Well, that's not how this works." That's literally a quote I heard from promoters and people who work at bars. Oh, well, that's not how it works. I'm like, oh, so the musicians have to pay for that. It's just really, and I think it is a state of late stage capitalism because everything there's a cost to everything. Everybody wants a cut of this, and it's just really evil. And I think that I don't want to be that guy. You call that punk? Let me tell you what punk is. I don't know, but nobody wants to hear. I mean, there were opportunities where I was asked to be in documentaries on, pop punk, emo, things like that, and I'm like, no thanks. Here, why don't you talk to this editor who is like 15 years younger than I am, and he can, because he's in bands, and he can understand, he can articulate the needs, desires, and focus of that thing. Nobody wants to hear their culture dictated to them from from the old guy, the man, as it were. So I understand that. I just think that I just think that I'm trying to think of how to articulate it. I think music has been demeaned because it's just been devalued by all this stuff like
Yeah,
file sharing and streaming rates and all this stuff. I just think it's devalued. And so
perfect.
when I hear these stories that like, oh, Bob Dylan sold his entire catalog for $80 million, I'm like thinking, okay, but I would probably also think, and this is me, this is generalizing. I also think that a lot of longtime Bob Dylan fans don't know what the internet is, and they still have pristine first copies of Blonde on Blonde and
Yeah.
the basement tape. So I know I'm kind of like, and believe me, I'm kind of, if you can tell, I'm kind of like, guilty on the physical media thing. But another thing I'd like to put out there, a sidebar to this is people who stream stuff and all that stuff. And if you like certain esoteric things, um, or obscure things like, whatever punk band from Crib Death, Iowa comes out and just goes, oh my God, that's amazing. You're thinking that it's going to all be up on the cloud. It's all going to be up available to you on streaming sites forever. And it's not. There's going to be a time where I'm sure there's going to be there's some executive at every streaming service who says, "Well, here's the list of things that aren't. Here's the ones that don't perform. They get less than 1,000 plays or something, and they're going away.
Yeah.
It's gone. You're not going to depending on, maybe you'll get lucky and some rabid fan puts it up as a YouTube sound file or something like that.
I
But I
agree.
think that and I think a lot of people would go, "Oh, don't worry, I've got my stuff on the cloud." If I were to put all of this stuff on, and it's just about maybe a third, no, not even a third of every. It's just I got too much stuff. But the thing is that the cloud, people are going to be like, there's a lot of people getting a whole lot of stuff on the cloud. Yeah, your cloud's not going to be $2-3 anymore. It's going to be 75, $80 to keep all of your photos, music, movies,
Yeah,
just
I
whatever.
agree. I
It's
think
going
that,
to happen. You're going to lose it. If you don't have a physical, you are going to lose it.
I think that that's one of the things that people are realizing now too. And it's kind of, everyone had, CDs, and then all this digital stuff came out. So let's get rid of all of our CDs. And then the thrift stores were full of CDs. And then people were like, oh, I'm really into vinyl. And then everybody got into vinyl and started collecting it, which I thought was great. I was like, oh, physical copies, awesome. And then, but at the same time, the digital still happening. And now it's so, because of the streaming and, like you say, the cloud, and you have to keep paying your Apple Pay for, every month. It costs money to hold on to your music. So it's like being held hostage. You don't just pay $14 for an album that you did, one time. Now it's 14 a month, right? So it's like, I think that you're really tapping into something great to think about, because well, I've seen a lot of CDs come back too. People are starting to bring the CDs back, and they're like, okay, I'm getting my CDs printed, and albums, and it's like, I'm hoping that a lot of that physical music comes back, because that's another way that artists can make money, is to sell an actual physical copy. And it's so much better to have it. It's like, this is mine. You know?
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's yeah. I don't know what happens. I don't know. I wonder. I'm sure there's like groups of dudes who collect records who are like they're like drinking coffee or something. They're drinking, they're having breakfast together. So, well, what's the male version of ladies who lunch? I don't know, but the
Boys
thing
who lunch?
is,
I don't know.
boys who lunch,
Lunch boys?
adults who dine.
There you
But
go.
you know, I think that there's a I think there's these conversations happen, and even there's like I've even seen young guys go in there. They'll go into a record store, and God bless them. I don't know where they get $300 to buy what? How many records is that? 20, maybe? I don't know. I
A
just
lot
look.
of
I
disposable
put
income.
back a record the other day. I put back a record the other day. I said I can do this, or I can pay my electric bill. I'm gonna put that back. I'll let
Yeah.
something come back for there's no denying that. But I think that there needs to be this concerted effort to support musicians in the best ways, and not just oh, you chose to go into this profession, therefore you must go ahead and try to flounder your way through it.
And I think it's the
And
same
it's
with
just
all art, right? It's all any sort of art that you can kind of purchase, and like photographers where, they put their photos on the internet and then boom, everybody can just take it and play with it and do whatever. And it's like, well, if we can support these photographers or support these painters or support authors, like buy your book, right? Buy his book. And so it's
I mean,
like,
yeah.
if you can, that's what I think. And one of the things that we've tapped into with these interviews, a lot of people talk about is the do-it-yourself thing about punk rock and how punk rock kind of started that, movement of do it yourself. Like, well, I don't have a manager, an agent. Well, I'm just going to do it myself, right? We're going to get in the van and, fall out with the beer, cans flying everywhere or whatever, right? But it's
Sure.
that do it yourself. And with you, I want to ask you a little bit about how with that because that in the beginning it sounds like you had that real do it yourself attitude, calling up and going, fuck this interview is awful, like what, you need help, I can do it kind of deal, right? It's sort of a paraphrasing there, but I think that's the whole, that's that punk movement to me. And do you agree with that, or anything to add before we go on to something else?
I think I don't. I just think that it's. I guess that would be kind of that whole thing. I mean, like I think anything. I mean, anything. If you don't like what's out there, well, okay, redress the balance. And how do you do that? I don't know. I didn't. I jumped on the alternative press zine before I could start actually making my own. I never did like the
Yeah,
shotgun
but you
journalism,
had, but
tuck
it's
and
that
go magazine.
attitude. It's the attitude that came with it, right? To go, this isn't, I'm not liking this. I want to see better, and it's that's kind of
Right,
punk
exactly. Sure.
attitude, right? And
Yeah,
that's
exactly. And I think my big thing was always, okay, what's new? What's good? What's the new thing? What's the new thing? And just like a lot of, I know people at a lot of alternative news weeklies. Well, they'll do a thing like Creed will be coming to their town, or some other Nickelback, or some horrible mainstream rock band. Well, we can't get an interview. So we're just going, and we don't really want an interview because we're just going to shit talk this guy anyway. So we're not going to the show, but the show's coming to our town. Oh, by the way, the show is sold out and you can't get tickets for it, but we're going to shit talk it for 1,200 words here in this space.
yeah.
There wasn't a really great local band that could have used that page. There wasn't something that was really special that's maybe playing on the Bloody Duck open mic night on Thursday. Whatever, that is, there's nothing there. It just seemed like a wasted opportunity to flex about nothing for nothing when there could have been somebody that could have used that lift. And that's kind of and I do think that at no point in my tenure, I'm really trying to think hard here. Like, we're going to do this big piece on this band and we're going to stitch them the fuck up because we hate that. Da, 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 da. And I'm trying to think. There have been times where we like, we're going to go into something. Hey, this is really cool. And the band were such a bunch of entitled pricks and like, okay, this is going in. And then, and then I would get a phone call or Mike would get a phone call about the unprofessional journalist that you sent
The punk
to the
rock
fan.
journalist.
The punk rock journalist. Oh, you mean the one you made wait in the lobby for 2.5 hours before acknowledging his arrival? You mean that guy? Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Talk. But tell us, please, discuss your punk credibility. You know,
Yeah. So, okay. So
it's
how about an interview, some of your favorite punk rock interviews that you've done or punk rock albums? You just kind of tell me what you feel that stands out for you.
oh, wow. I mean, just punk rock records. There was just, I mean,
So many.
Group Sex by the Circle Jerks. I mean, that's just the ultimate. That's really the ultimate in snottiness. Um, Fear the Record is some of the most horrific, politically incorrect stuff, but it was just made by lunkheads who are just pushing buttons for the sake of pushing buttons, and like, a lot of people told me that a lot, leaving always used to do a thing like, I know you came down because you were getting the hot tub installed in Frisco, and there were all sorts of gay people who thought that was funny as hell. You know what I mean? So, those two things really, the British things, obviously, the damned records up to Phantasmagoria, which was a little bit more British. It was very, very British, very wear a derby and carry an umbrella type of, simply fiendish. Um, all the damned records. Obviously, the Clash. The Jam were never considered a capital P punk band, but those guitars were sharp, and Paul Weller was pissed, and they just drove that stuff home. Um, and even bands like Discharge or like, and let's talk about. I mean, there's all of that. Those records that Crass put out. Those rudimentary teeny records are just like, oh, they're chrome melting. There's just so much out there that's kind of, and it's still ripe for rediscovering if you're 10, 15, 20 years old now. The internet offers you a huge buffet. The internet offers you a
Yeah.
huge buffet of whatever you could possibly want. The problem is everybody needs a menu to draw from.
Yeah,
And I
totally.
mean, it's out
No,
there. And it's not like those records are old, but you're not classic. It was a classic quote. I remember interviewing Eric Davidson from the New Bomb Turks very early on when Destroy Oh Boy, their first record came out, and he was talking about generations and how these things, that it's not your parents' music anymore, and the whole idea of, Eric made this thing where you have to make the case that what you are listening to is not necessarily old, it's great. So a
yeah,
kid discovering Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones for the first time, if he's been subjected to all this, mouse moving pop music that's happening now, he hears Satisfaction and what? And then, like, I think punk rock, because there's so much stuff that still has legs. Those Dead Kennedys records are still absolutely amazing.
yeah.
Those
Well,
the Black Flag, that whole canon of you know 80s
yeah.
punk, American punk is great, and it was happening in other places too. There's truly a canon of stuff that deserves to go back to. So, like, when somebody says we remastered it, cynics say, oh, just another way to make money. I'm like, yes, there is that, but if you lived it, you probably beat the hell out of your records, and you need upgrades anyway.
Yeah, and also
And the other aspect is,
yeah, it introduces it to a new generation too by doing that, right? It's like even though it's
exactly.
out, it still introduces it. It's like, oh, here it is again, in case you missed it,
And
So
you're not gonna. I mean, like, are we gonna find reissues of all those classic bands? Are we gonna find those in Target?
yeah,
Because you have to take into consideration that most record stores, um, the local area record store is Target. It's that whatever those 100 different titles are, that's what's going to be
Yeah.
in there. And a lot of people don't take that into consideration.
Do you think that
That
people should, like, my thought towards it is that people should maybe find stuff on streaming or check out local different bands that are playing, or try to find some obscure stuff and then go and buy it from either their independent record label or the artist directly, to have that physical copy. What would you suggest for the new people to try to
I
get?
everything you just said. I think you should look at streaming as um, it was I'm trying to think of it, like um, it was Mara Griffin, who is an executive, a licensing executive whose company, I forget the company, but she's literally the first quote in the ministry book, where she talks about how certain things have changed about that, and he says that essentially streaming services are kind of a lot like fanzines. They're like MRR. They're like NME and Melody Maker in their halcyon days, where you would learn something certain about this new music that was coming out. And so if you look at streaming like that, and then you go, huh. And then if you
Yeah,
discover
that's
something like, oh, well, I'm going to discover something. I'm going to go to Bandcamp because Bandcamp has been integral, and like that. So, oh, I just heard this one song and they got three records. What the hell is this? And that acts as a conduit, for that thing. And of course, you've got that Bandcamp has their like Bandcamp Friday, where if they don't take a cut of anything, all the artists, get whatever people,
right.
pay
Okay.
for.
Good idea.
So I
That's
think
great to add. Definitely a good idea.
I think it's incredibly important. But I don't know uh, if you had some sort of crazy wild punk band who like how it ends up on some car commercial. Uh, I have to say, like, if you're living lean, I mean, yeah, take that couple grand, man. Just take it. It's
Yeah.
just, but if you, but it's just so, it's just so, I just hate the fact that music has been valued in so many ways, and I
Valued.
think
You're right. That was
we,
a great
it
word.
needs it needs to be that really needs to happen. But ultimately, if you like stuff that's not what gets played on the radio and not, you're going to have to go search for it, and you want to support that, and you want to be part of that that special club
Mhm.
that I was talking about. And the special club changes within, because I say to myself, okay, I'm listening to like hardcore, and then I'm listening to these really weird British indie bands, and then you discover, oh, what's this thing called the Birthday Party? I'm hearing about this, so, like in the '80s. You discover this stuff, and there's all this massive stuff that's happening. And then when I find myself getting jaded, like, oh, this is boring, everything sucks. Oh my God, what the hell happened? There's two corollaries. The first one is, I think, what are people that are 20 years old, 18 to 20 years old, or 23 years old, what are they listening to right now that makes them think that they're the only person in the world who knows about this and they're part of it? Like throughout the late 90s, it was a lot of electronica, DJ culture, lots of electronic, weird Aphex Twin, a lot of the stuff around the Warp Records thing, or
Yep.
drum and bass, or all those things, or even ambient, certain aspects of ambience, ambient, or whatever there is, the subcultures that spawn, out from that stuff. I'm thinking, okay, so I'm just trying to figure out what would be the next thing. And I'm kind of like, oh, okay, I get it. And then my faith is kind of restored on this stuff. Like, even I believe, I think 21st century, the concept of metal being, well, there's post metal and there's metal gaze, which is the aspects of shoegaze, and and taking.
Yep.
So it's not just riff, 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 or you know like I was saying, look at me, shreddy,
I
shreddy
know.
kilowatt. It's not, but like it seems to me, metal fans, metal fans are the best when it comes to loyalty. I mean, I just you go to I on the rare occasion I'm at a metal show, I'll see somebody walk away with 60, $100, $150 worth of merchandise or their favorite bands. That culture is really vibrant and really positive and
Very supportive
dedicated.
for sure. So one thing to wrap it
And
all up, I wanted to ask about what does the word punk, what does it mean to you today? Or when you hear the word punk, what do you think of today?
to me, I kind of like I listen to who's saying it. I listen to who's saying the word. If it's somebody of a certain age,
But no, but
uh,
you, like, what is the
me
actual word?
personally,
Yeah, what does it mean to you today? Like,
what
just
it means to me, stick to your guns. Stick to your fucking guns. Don't be swayed by anybody's position as you what they think you should be doing. If you are committed to something, an aesthetic vision, a technique, or I mean, and that applies to anything: painting, film, uh, hot rod restoration. You know what I mean? Anything that's just creative. You just gotta. I don't know. What do you think you should be doing? You know what I mean? And maybe some people, and admittedly, maybe you need some guidance, not necessarily literal guidance, but I don't know, like, what's your heart say? What do you want to, what's the thing that you want to, what's the thing you want to bring into the world? What is the choice? Whether you're, whether it's a palette of art paint or a sewing machine or, a portative keyboard, whatever it is, what is it that you want to see in the world? Now, shut up and make it and
shut up
fail a
and
couple
make it.
times because you're not going
Shut
to do
up
it.
and
Yeah,
make it. I
make
like
it.
it. Shut up and make it. That's
So
awesome. Thank you so much, Jason, for being on our show. And everyone, you can get his book. Where can we get it?
Bloomsbury.com. It's part of the 33 and a third series on short books about massive records. And to me, The Land of Rape and Honey is my favorite record in life. But I still love you. Here Come the Warm Jets. So you're still number two. So yeah. So
Awesome.
thank you for the support. Thank you for having me up to chat and espouse and run my mouth.
It's so awesome. I really love hearing your experience and your perspective on everything because you hit a lot of things that just went, excellent. I love that. That's wonderful.
I hope I just hope everybody has fun. And like I always remember, it's always a recurring thing in Ian MacKay's when he's talking about other bands. He would always say, like, whatever you do, just have fun. If you don't make any money, whatever, just have fun. So then you
Yeah.
get done with that and you carry on with your life and you go, oh, I had fun then.
And support
Because these
others.
days,
Support others. Yeah.
I think that fun is going to be at a premium these days.
Art is going to be so important, and art is so important right now with these horrible times, these dark times that we're having, that art is that, that's that escape. That's that, we all need to make art and sell art and buy art and support artists. And, we need to be a community of all kinds of art and look into that for some inspiration, I think. So I'm really happy that you could talk about it and talk about your experience and your book coming out because I definitely already pre-ordered it. So
Thank you.
I'm excited to get a copy and to read it. And yeah, so thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Jason, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, my
Take
friend.
good care. Take care, everybody.